Happy Friday. I have a new story to share with you today. We're moving away from stepping out of the boat and onto the water, and I want to talk about walking through the fire. There's a reason for that. So when I was telling the story about stepping out of the boat, it was because God was calling me to step out of the boat. Now I find myself walking through the fire, and while it's not pleasant, it is what it is. So I'm reminded of a story in Daniel 3. The story is when King Nebuchadnezzar built a 90-foot statue that was 9 feet wide. It was made of gold, and he required everyone of all races, of all nations, of all languages, when they heard music coming from horns, zithers, pipes, harps, flutes, they were commanded to bow down and worship the statue. So local astrologers were informing King Nebuchadnezzar that there were 3 Jews who were absolutely refusing to bow down and worship his statue. King Nebuchadnezzar became angered by this, and he demanded that somebody bring him Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He asked, "Is it true that you're refusing to bow down when you hear the music? If that's the case, I will give you one more chance, and if you refuse to do it again, I will throw you into the fiery furnace." They replied, "Oh, Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need to defend ourselves against you. If we are thrown into the fire, our God is able to rescue us. But even if he doesn't, we will never bow down to your God, and we will never bow down to your statue." With this, Nebuchadnezzar became so furious. His face was contorted, and I put some pictures of my contorted face later in the video. He demanded they light the fire and make it 7 times hotter than usual. He ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be bound and thrown into the fiery furnace. So he found his strongest soldiers and commanded them to carry out his plan. Well, the fire was so hot that as the soldiers brought Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego near, they died from the heat exposure. Suddenly, King Nebuchadnezzar called out, "Hey, didn't we send 3 men bound up into the fiery furnace? I see 4 of them walking around, and one of them looks like a god." He got as close as he could to the furnace, and he called out, "Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, come out." They came out, and they were surrounded by the Most High officials. There were governors, there were advisors, and what they noticed was that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were untouched. There was no singe marks or burn marks on their clothing or on their skin. They didn't even smell like smoke. Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel to rescue his servants who trusted in him. They defied the king's command, and they were willing to die rather than serve or worship any god other than their own. Therefore, Nebuchadnezzar decreed that if any person whatsoever, no matter what race, nation, or language, spoke a word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, or Abednego, they would be torn apart, limb from limb, and their house would be destroyed. He said, "There is no other God who can rescue like this." So I know this was a long one this time, but I just want to offer reassurance to anybody who might be walking through the fire. In James 1, verses 2 and 4, it says, "Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing." I hope this is a word of encouragement for anybody who finds themselves walking through the fire. And I will look forward to seeing everybody next week. Oh, and stay tuned. There are pictures coming. Maybe it's this way. But anyway, I had some facial contortions that might entertain you. See you next week.